ये पूछा वो एडिशन में क्या
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Can we start?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, please.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So all other mics can be muted.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Danat Pranam, Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvashe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna. So welcome to the second session of the first unit of the Bhakti Vaibhava course. So in the last class, we had discussed the first and the second verses. So basically in the first verse, we had discussed about the Supreme Absolute Truth and how the Supreme Absolute Truth can be recognized by the Swarup Lakshan and the Tatastha Lakshan. Somebody remembers what is meant by Swarup Lakshan and Tatastha Lakshan in that context of the first verse? Yes, anyone wants to answer? Okay, it seems 1 week has been too long. So anyway, so the Swarup Lakshan, the primary characteristics are referring to the characteristics of the Supreme Lord. So in the verse, it basically refers to Param Satyam. Param means transcendental and Satyam means the absolute truth. And then the various activities are the Tatastha Lakshan. So the activities are Tene Brahmarade Adi Kavaye and Janmadi. That means creation, maintenance, destruction, giving knowledge to Brahma. All these activities constitute the Tatastha Lakshan. And then we had a detailed discussion on each of these aspects. And also we had discussed of how the material world is illusory, Tejo, Vari, Mridham, how it is made up of these material elements controlled by the 3 modes. But the spiritual world is Kuhaka Nirastam. It is free from the illusions of this material world. And then we discussed why Vyasadeva invokes the Gayatri Mantra by use of the word Dhimahi. So we had a discussion on all these points. And then the second verse, where Vyasadeva is speaking about who can actually understand the knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam and what is the content of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma projita kaitavatra parama nirmatsaranam satam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam has kicked out all the other types of cheating religions. So any type of contaminated religion other than the topmost religion of pure devotional service, anything other than that is kicked out of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this knowledge of the Bhagavatam can only be understood by those who are nirmatsaranam, who are 100% pure in heart. And the Srimad Bhagavatam talks about the Vedyam Vastavam Vastu, the actual substance, along with all its categories, that is the supreme absolute truth, along with all its various energies. That is what is discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And who can, and what is the process by which one can actually understand the Srimad Bhagavatam is Kritibi and Shushrushubi. Kritibi means one who is pious, that means given up sinful activities. And Shushrushubi means those who are eager to hear, so they can understand this Srimad Bhagavatam. So these were some of the points we had discussed in the first two verses. So now we'll proceed ahead with the third verse. So we'll recite the third verse. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukhadamrita drava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more relishable, even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Okay, somebody can read the first two paragraphs of the purport.
Hare Krishna. In the two previous shlokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic scriptures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and the mundane knowledge. In this shloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. Second paragraph, the Vedas are compared to the desire tree because they contain all the things knowable by man. They deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realization. The Vedas contain regulated principles of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subject matter, and all that may be necessary to keep the body and soul together. Above and beyond all this are specific directions for spiritual realization. Regulated knowledge involves the gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform. And the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all spiritual tastes or rasas.
Okay, fine. So here, Vyasadeva is glorifying the Srimad Bhagavatam and inviting all the devotees to relish the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he is saying that the Srimad Bhagavatam, Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is the Galitam Phalam, the mature fruit of all the Vedic literatures. So Nigama refers to the Vedic literatures, which are compared to Kalpataro, desire tree. So the Vedic literatures are compared to a desire tree because the Vedic literatures contain all knowledge, material as well as spiritual. Whatever one wants, whatever knowledge one wants is available in the Vedas. And according to one's level, according to one's taste, one can adopt different processes that have been given in the Vedas. There is Karmakan, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, everything is there within the Srimad Bhagavatam, within the Vedic literature. So therefore it's compared to a desire tree. But the mature fruit of this desire tree is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So why it is considered to be the mature fruit? Because it is given by Srila Shukadeva Goswami in his maturity. Okay, so this is Vishwanath Thakur's commentary on this Galitam Phalam. So somebody can read.
Galitam means that it falls down of its own accord when ripened on the tree, not by force. Thus, it is completely full of sweetness. Even does not break.
Even after
falling from a high position in the tree, it does not break, nor does it lose its sweetness. That is because it comes down from the highest position, from Narayan, to the branch of Brahma, then to the lower branch of Narad, then to Vyas, and then finally to the mouth of Shuka. Thus, without being damaged, it is endowed with liquid sweetness like honey. The parrot, Shuka, has even made an opening in the fruit with its beak for bringing out the sweetness. Moreover, having been tested by him, that fruit becomes even sweeter. Moreover, it remains unbroken, coming down step by step from the branch of Sutta and others. What is implied here is that without the Guru Parampara, one cannot drink Bhagavatam in its unbroken form, just by trying to taste it through use of one's limited intelligence.
Okay. So here he's saying that the word Galitam means the fully mature fruit. So when the fruit becomes fully ripe, it falls down on its own, not by force. So of course, these days, people don't allow the fruits to become fully ripe on the tree and fall down on their own. So because people want to collect the fruits and then artificial ripening so that they ripen fast. If they're on the tree, then it'll take time. So we find these things happening, but actually the fruit which ripens on the tree naturally, that tastes much sweeter. I don't know if you have experience of that. So the word Galitam means it's a fully ripe fruit that falls on its own, or which has the potential to fall on its own. But then he's explaining that even after falling from high position in the tree, it does not break, nor does it lose its sweetness. Why? Because the fruit is fully ripe and is just about to fall. But then when it's just about to fall, a person, he picks that fruit and very carefully hands it down. Maybe he climbs the tree, he takes the fruit, then there's another person below on a little higher level, he gives the fruit to him, and then he passes it further down. So in that way, the fully ripened fruit is gradually handed down so that the fruit does not break or lose its taste. So in the same way, the ripened fruit of the Vedic literature, the Srimad Bhagavatam, is basically coming from the Supreme Lord himself. As we will see later in the second canto, the original Srimad Bhagavatam was given by the Supreme Lord himself in the form of the 4 gist verses, the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. And that was given by the Supreme Lord to Brahma. Brahma hands it down to Narad, Narad to Vyas, and Vyas to Shukadeva Goswami. That's how the Srimad Bhagavatam has been handed down in Parampara. Okay. And so finally, over here, it has been given to Shukadeva Goswami. And Shukadeva Goswami, he has relished this fruit of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he is now giving that message with his own realizations. And that is why the fruit of the Srimad Bhagavatam has become even more sweeter. Now, further down the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining. Now, this is a few paragraphs down. You can see Prabhupada is writing, by submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of his heart's desire. But one must be very careful to hear the message from the right source. Srimad Bhagavatam is exactly received from the right source. It was brought by Narad Muni from the spiritual world and given to his disciple Sri Vyasadeva. The latter in turn delivered the message to his son, Sri Shukdev Goswami, and Sri Shukdev Goswami delivered the message to Maharaj Parikshit just 7 days before the king's death. And then he's describing about Sri Shukdev Goswami a little further down. But Sri Shukdev Goswami, due to his being a perfectly liberated soul, did not have to undergo an evolutionary process for spiritual realization. So he didn't have to undergo any sanskaras or anything. Yet despite his being a completely liberated person situated in the transcendental position above the three material modes, he was attracted to this transcendental rasa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is adored by liberated souls who sing Vedic hymns. The Supreme Lord's pastimes are more attractive to liberated souls than to mundane people. Okay, so this is the famous Atmaram verse, which comes later on in the 7th chapter. But even those who are Atmaramas, who are fully satisfied, who are on the liberated platform, they also relish the Srimad Bhagavatam because it contains the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. He is of necessity not impersonal because it's only possible to carry on transcendental rasa with a person. So we'll discuss this point in a minute. So, Shuka Mukhad Amrita Drava Samyutam. So further down, Prabhupada says that when a ripened fruit is cut by the red beaks of such birds like the parrots, Shuka, its sweet flavor is enhanced. Again, we don't know how many have experience of this, but I've heard from other people that previously when fruits were allowed to ripen on the trees, then the parrot would come and just bite a small portion of that. And then those fruits are said to be sweeter. And so therefore, then those who are growing the fruits, the farmers, then they would pick up these fruits, just remove that portion which has been eaten by the parrot and eat the rest of the fruit, because that's a sign that these are the sweetest fruits, because the parrot knows exactly which fruits are sweet. And so the Vedic fruit, which is mature and ripe in knowledge, is spoken through the lips of Srila Shukdev Goswami, who is compared to the parrot, not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his learned father, but for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. So this is exactly what is called as realization, as we will discuss in greater detail in the 4th chapter of this canto. But what makes the message more sweet is when the speaker adds his own realizations to the message. And that is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining here, that it is not that Srila Shukdev Goswami just repeated the message as a parrot. He definitely did that, but he added his own realizations so that the message becomes more appealing or more relevant to all classes of people of this age. And of course, that message was given by Shukdev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, and then Sutta Goswami speaks it to the sages of Naimisharanya. And then, of course, finally, in Parampara, we have the same Srimad Bhagavatam by Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada he has maintained the message that has been given by Shukdev Goswami and the previous acharyas, but at the same time, Srila Prabhupada has added his own realizations to make the message relevant for the modern people of this age. And that's how the Srimad Bhagavatam has become even more sweeter and even more relevant to the people of this modern age. And that is why we see that so many people are able to appreciate the message of Srimad Bhagavatam as given by Srila Prabhupada. So that is the meaning of of the message coming down in parampara and becoming sweeter. And then in the next paragraph, Prabhupada is presenting these same points, that how the ripened fruit is not dropped all of a sudden from the highest plant of Krishna Loka, rather it has come down carefully through the chain of disciplic succession without change or disturbances. So that is the meaning of coming down in parampara without change or disturbances. The message has to be handed down in parampara without any change. Okay. And so therefore, towards the end of this paragraph, Srila Prabhupada, he emphasizes this point that this process of disciplic succession of the Bhagavad school suggests that in the future also Srimad Bhagavatam has to be understood from a person who is factually a representative of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. A professional man who makes a business out of reciting the Bhagavatam illegally is certainly not a representative of Shukadeva Goswami. Okay, so they usually plunge into the subject matter of the rasa dance, which is misunderstood by the foolish class of men. Some of them take this to be immoral, while others try to cover it up by their own stupid interpretations. They have no desire to follow in the footsteps of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. One should conclude, therefore, that the serious student of the rasa should receive the message of Bhagavatam in the chain of disciplic succession from Srila Shukadeva Goswami, who describes the Bhagavatam from its very beginning and not whimsically to satisfy the mundane who has very little knowledge in transcendental science. Okay, so it's very important to receive the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam in parampara and not from anyone. So sometimes one may think that, oh, this person is speaking on Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam, so why not here? No, but Sanatana Goswami has given the warning, which Srila Prabhupada often quoted, and that is, he gives the example that just like milk, so milk is very nutritious food, but if the milk is touched by the lips of a serpent, even though the milk apparently appears to be the same, but when the milk is touched by the lips of a serpent, it's going to become poisonous and will have deadly lethal effects, even though apparently the milk appears to be the same. So similarly, Krishna Katha, even though apparently may appear to be the same, but when it is spoken by the atheistic class of people or the professional reciters or Mayavadis, then the same message becomes contaminated by their consciousness. And so therefore, Sanatana Goswami gives the warning that the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna Katha should never be heard from such people, but it should be only heard from the devotees. Okay, so sometimes devotees also think that, okay, why not hear some Krishna Katha, some Bhagavad Sapta is going on here, Bhagavad Sapta is going on there. Why not here? Sometimes our ISKCON devotees also tend to go and think they can hear from anyone. But no, it apparently may appear to be the same, but because it is contaminated by the wrong consciousness, by hearing, it has wrong effects or deadly effects. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is given the warning, Mayavad Bhashya Shunle Hoi Sarvanash. If one hears from a Mayavadi, one's devotional creeper will be totally destroyed. So therefore, one should always hear from bona fide devotees, and especially as devotees of ISKCON, there are so many bona fide devotees within ISKCON who are speaking Krishna Katha. And so we should hear from them. What is the need to hear from somebody else who's outside of our organization? There's absolutely no need. So one should not think, oh, I will get some masala, some nectar from here, from there. So no need, there's absolutely no need. So rather than getting some nectar, one will get some poison. So therefore, one should be careful to hear the message of the Bhagavatam only in parampara. And that's what actually makes the message sweeter. Therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti says here, what is implied here is that without the Guru Parampara, one cannot drink Bhagavatam in its unbroken form just by trying to taste it through use of one's limited intelligence. So this is another important point. So one cannot think that I have the Bhagavatam, I'll read on my own. So Srila Prabhupada gives the example, one cannot even become an engineer or doctor simply by purchasing books from the market and reading. So one needs to go to a college and then hear from the teachers, then one can actually understand. Then what to speak of spiritual subject matters? The spiritual subject matters which are on a transcendental platform, and they definitely need to be heard from the realized devotees. And then only the subject matter can actually be understood. So that one has to hear from the Guru Parampara, and not simply by the use of one's limited intelligence. And that's the process that Krishna himself speaks in the Bhagavad Gita. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninastapadharshi. So that is the process. So one has to, first of all, pranipat, surrender to the bona fide devotees, serve them, then inquire from them, and that's how the knowledge gets revealed. So this is how one can receive the message of the Bhagavatam. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada concludes this purport by saying, Srimad Bhagavatam is so carefully presented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian juice through the mouth of Shukadeva Goswami or his bona fide representative. So there is a qualification of the speaker and there's a qualification of the hearer. The qualification of the speaker is that he must be a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami. So just like Shukadeva Goswami totally renounced, he was not speaking the Bhagavatam as a profession to earn money or for any other material reason. So similarly, a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami must speak the Srimad Bhagavatam selflessly, just for the sake of enlightening others and for one's own purification. And the qualification of the hearer of the Srimad Bhagavatam is that he must be sincere and serious. Then one can actually relish the message. So now, here it is being mentioned that, so Shukamukha Amrita Drava Sanyutam. So this, the word pibata is being used. Pibata means what? To drink. So the Bhagavatam is not just like a fruit, but actually it's like a juice which can be drunk, just like mango. So mango is definitely very tasty, but if one makes juice out of it, then it becomes even more nectarian, right? The mango season is coming very soon. So, but the point is that the Bhagavatam is also like a nectarian juice, which one can drink. Pibata Bhagavatam. And so it is rasam, it is a juice. And so it is amrita, drava. So amrit means nectar and drava means semi-solid and soft and therefore easily swallowable. Prabhupada is writing the word-to-word meanings. And so it's like a juice which can be relished. So till what time one can relish this Srimad Bhagavatam? Alayam. Alayam means until liberation or even in a liberated condition. So that is mean of alayam. Alayam means till death or till liberation. And definitely even in the liberated state, one can relish the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the word rasam has also, so rasam is juice, which is very relishable. And why this rasam is very relishable? Prabhupada is explaining that in the second paragraph that we just read, regulated knowledge involves a gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform, and the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all spiritual tastes or rasas. And then Prabhupada gives a list of the 12 rasas, as we know, 5 primary and the 7 secondary rasas. So as we have studied in the Nectar of Devotion, that the Supreme Lord is called Akhila Rasamrita Murti. He's the embodiment of all rasas. He's the embodiment of all relationships. So rasa basically means a relationship, because it is only when there are relationships that one can actually relish, one can actually find great happiness and joy. That is the reason why the Jnanis and the yogis, they don't actually relish spiritual rasa, because they try to be alone and they try to have their do their spiritual practices alone. And therefore, they cannot actually relish the rasa, the relationship which the Supreme Lord has. So the Supreme Lord has all these rasas with all the living entities. And as Srila Prabhupada defines in the Nectar of Devotion, what is a rasa? Rasa is an impetus by which a person performs different activities. So he gives the examples that just like a family person, a family man, he performs his activities because of the relationship with his family members. He wants to please the family members. Similarly, a philanthropic worker, because of the relationship with the society, with the country, that is the reason he wants to serve the society or he wants to serve the country. So it's basically the relationship that impels a person to perform different activities. And it is that relationship which actually gives happiness to that person. But of course, all these relationships are in a perverted form in the material world. The original relationships are in the spiritual world in relationship to Krishna, who is the embodiment of all rasas. And so therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is basically talking about Krishna, who is the embodiment of all these rasas. And therefore, by studying the Srimad Bhagavatam, one establishes a relationship with Krishna, and that actually gives real transcendental happiness to the living entity. And therefore, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada writes, the sum total of all these rasas is called affection or love. And further down the purport, he says, the rasas are exchanged between members of the same species, but as far as spirit souls are concerned, they are one qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the spiritual living being and the spiritual whole, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual exchange or rasa is fully exhibited in spiritual existence between living beings and Supreme Lord. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore described in the Shruti mantras, Vedic hymns, as the fountainhead of all rasas, or Akhila Rasamrita Murti. When one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchanges one's constitutional rasa with the Lord, then the living being is actually happy. Okay, so that's how one can actually become happy, by exchanging rasa, by exchanging a relationship with the Supreme Lord. That's our original constitutional position. Okay, so Vishwanath Thakur is continuing in his commentary. So please read this.
How should the fruit be consumed? That is explained. One should drink it, for this fruit is the essence of taste, rasam, devoid of skin, seed, and other objectionable parts. Laya means liberation, sayujya, or attaining the conditions of salokya, sarishti, samipya, sarupya. The word alayam then means that the fruit extends beyond these types of liberation, because Bhagavatam is famous for glorifying the Lord's pastimes. Or laya can refer to the eighth, sattvic bhav, called pralay, fainting. One should drink until one develops the 8 symptoms up to the final one, fainting. Though one will not be able to drink the nectar when one has fainted, when the fainting wears off, one again awakens to consciousness and begins drinking until one faints again. One cannot give up drinking. Thus the word muhur continuously is used. Or muhur can have another meaning. Though one has drunk it, by again drinking it, one develops more relish for it. This is surprising. Aho. O knowers of rasa, rasika. This refers only to the devotees, for they develop rati bhav, which becomes the sthai bhav. In that position, they can taste the rasa of Bhagavatam. Jnani yogis and karma yogis cannot claim this position. O auspicious persons, bhavuka, you are the most auspicious and all others are inauspicious.
Right. Okay, so your name is Rasika Priya. So you are, by your name, you're qualified to taste the rasa of the Bhagavatam. So here, Shukdev, Vyasadeva is inviting all the Rasikas, Rasika Priya. He is inviting all the Rasikas, the knowers of the rasa. That means the knowers of these transcendental relationships between the Supreme Lord and the devotees. So they are the devotees. The devotees only can understand these relationships of the Supreme Lord with the devotees. So Vyasadeva is inviting all the devotees to relish the Srimad Bhagavatam, which, and this word alayam. So one meaning, as we discussed, is till liberation and even after liberation. But another meaning he's also giving is that is till one develops the Ashtasatvika Vikar, that is the ecstatic symptom. One of the ecstatic symptoms is pralay, fainting. So till one develops these ecstatic symptoms, till one develops love of God, prema, and develops these ecstatic symptoms, one should go on drinking the nectar of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's because that is the goal. The goal of studying the Srimad Bhagavatam is not just to get a Bhakti Vaibhava certificate. The goal of studying the Srimad Bhagavatam is to develop prema, Krishna prema. That is our goal. And so till that point of time, one relishes, one drinks the nectar of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, as he's explaining, one develops the ecstatic symptom of fainting. And then when the fainting wears off, then again one awakens to consciousness and again begins to drink. So the word muhur means always, continuously. So, and interestingly, he's saying that though one has drunk it, but again drinking it, one develops more relish for it. Many times devotees ask this question, how can we develop a taste for reading or hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam? The answer is this. The more we read, the more we hear, the more we relish. On the platform of sadhana bhakti, we do it as a duty, as an austerity. We may do it in that way. But then if we continue doing it, then actually the relish develops, the taste develops, and then one naturally wants to hear and read the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so that's the meaning of the word muhur. Again and again, one keeps on, one wants to read again and again. But one can relish it to the degree one has the sincerity and seriousness. To that degree, one can relish the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is possible only for the devotees, not for the Jnana Yogis, Karma Yogis, and all this other. Prabhupada translates bhavukaha as expert and thoughtful. Okay, so those who are experts in understanding these subject matters, those who are thoughtful, those who are really interested in understanding this message, only they can understand. Okay, please continue to read a few more points.
Bhuvi then indicates Vraj Bhumi. Bhavuka and Rasika indicate the dear gopis. O dear relishers of Krishna's rasa, drink the sweetness of the ras arising from his form, Bhagavatam, or Pibat Bhagavatam Rasam Alyam can mean relish ras up to the point of embracing Alyam Krishna. Krishna's rasa is indestructible, Amrit, and flows away quickly from the mind and eye, Drava. Therefore, drink that indestructible nectar in the form of his lips. In that case, Nigam Kalpa Taror Galitam Phalam means Raganuga Bhakti, which is fully ripened fruit, Galitam, on the tree of the Vedas. This fully ripened fruit is Raganuga Bhakti, following after the sentiments of the gopis, which is the highest type of love. This is an acceptable meaning because, as mentioned in the Brihad Vamana Purana, the Vedas, taking up that type of bhakti, accepted the forms of hundreds of thousands of gopis and drank the sweet rasa of his lips. This very secret meaning can be seen in the prayers of the personified Vedas.
Yes, so the Galitam Phalam also could indicate Raganuga Bhakti. So in any case, so whether one is on Sadhana Bhakti or Raganuga Bhakti, one can relish the messages of the Srimad Bhagavatam because they are about the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, who is full of rasa, full of these wonderful, sweet relationships with the devotees and all the living entities. Okay, this is Prabhupada's lecture on the verse. Please read.
So this verse recommends that Pibata Bhagavatam Rasam Alyam. Rasam Alyam. Alyam Lay. Lay means to merge. We are also merged into this material world, just like yours body. My body is material, but I am the soul. You are the soul. I am merged into this material, but because I am a spirit, although I am merged, I am not getting happiness. Just like if you are put into Atlantic Ocean, you merge, But because you are not the living entity of the water, you cannot be happy. You cannot be happy. That merging is there. You have to merge into spiritual existence. Then you will be happy. That is Bhagavatam Rasam Alyam.
So Prabhupada is explaining in simple words. So basically, as we discussed, Rasamalayam, Alayam means till liberation. So till liberation means till we get out of the material consciousness. So then we can actually relish. So till liberation, or till one gets out of the material consciousness, as long as one is in the material consciousness, one cannot relish. So just like if we are put in the Atlantic Ocean, then we cannot be happy because we are not living entities of the water. So similarly, we are not meant for this material world. So as long as one is in material consciousness, one cannot relish. So therefore he says one has to continue reading till the point of liberation, till one comes out of material consciousness, then one can actually relish the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Okay, any questions or clarifications on this verse?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I'm audible?
Yes.
This word bhavuka, it stated that expert and thoughtful. So expert in what sense basically?
So as Srila Prabhupada is concluding the purport by saying that the Srimad Bhagavatam is so carefully presented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian juice through the mouth of Shukadeva Goswami as bona fide representative. So here, Bhavuka refers to those who are expert in the sense that they are sincere and serious in trying to understand the subject matter. So he's inviting such Bhavukas. So both Rasika and Bhavuka. So Rasika means those who have knowledge about Rasa, the mellows, the relationships of the Supreme Lord with his devotees and all living entities. And Bhavuka refers to those who are expert and thoughtful. So those who are expert, that means they are expert in practicing devotional service. They're expert and means serious in trying to understand the subject matter. So that is the meaning of expert as Srila Prabhupada is present here. And of course, Vishwanath Thakur, then he expands on that, and he's referring to the greatest of the experts, and that is the gopis, who can actually relish this message or the sweetness of the rasa with Krishna. So, but in any case, so we may not be on that platform, but then at least it must be our sincere desire to come to that platform. So therefore, Prabhupada is saying sincere and serious. That is the expertise. The expertise is trying to become sincere and serious to practice devotional service. Does it help?
One more thing you mentioned about one cannot become doctor or engineer by simply purchasing books. One has to go to laboratory.
Yes, Prabhupada gives this example.
So why we distribute books to random people then?
Yes, good question. So somebody would like to answer. Why are we distributing millions of books all over the world if one cannot understand simply by reading?
They get mercy, Prabhuji, and the idea is that they read the books and ultimately they come in the association of the devotees, and either their nearest center or whatever it is. But the idea is that they get this mercy that, whenever they touch it, they see it, some sukati will be developed, and
Correct.
The ultimate goal is to focus them to come into the association of devotees.
Correct. So exactly, perfectly. Antaryama Balaram Prabhu has given a wonderful answer. So when one receives a book, one receives the seed of devotional service. So, and then after receiving the seed, then one has to water the seed. So for watering the seed, one needs the association of devotees. In the association of devotees, one hears and chants. The watering process is hearing and chanting in the association of devotees. So by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, one gets the seed of devotion, and then one understands, because throughout Srila Prabhupada's purpose, one is talking about the importance of the association of devotees and hearing and chanting in association. So then I'm sure all of us have this experience, at least those who have come to Krishna consciousness by getting a book. After getting the book, then the next thing is one tries to find out where can I get the association of devotees, from whom can I understand the subject matter. And that's what happens to so many people, isn't it? After reading a book, then they try to find out where they can get more knowledge about this. And that's how they come to ISKCON centers and association of devotees. That's what happens. But the seed is given by receiving the book. That's how the devotional service actually begins. That's how the bhakti begins. Yes, Rukmini Mati?
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
A few days back, a person asked me a question. He is a pious person, and he asked that Bhagavad Gita is spoken 5,000 years ago. Now you are saying me to take the book. And if I talk about Guru Granth Sahib, it's just he was telling, I think, 300 years something. So he was saying that this is like as you were saying, the point that Prabhupada is saying that Prabhupada has the same Srimad Bhagavatam, but Prabhupada has mentioned like a Shukmukhat. So yes. He has. So what answer should I can be given on this, Prabhuji? If he is taking the example of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, because he was saying that this is for this age, for the people of life, and it's so close, just 325 years something.
Okay. So what's the question exactly?
Question is that he was saying that I should go for, because both are religion, so I should go for hearing Guru Granth Sahib Ji, because I think it's more closer to me, because
more
it's
recent.
A few years more recent. Yes.
Okay. Of course, what he wants to hear is up to him. We cannot stop him from hearing Guru Granth Sahib or Bhagavatam. What he wants to hear is up to him. But the logic that is more recent is not correct. Because if he says that is 300 years or so, then as far as Srila Prabhupada is giving us Srimad Bhagavatam is concerned, that is even more recent. Correct? So then Srila Prabhupada has begun writing the Srimad Bhagavatam. This first canto, he began somewhere in 1960. Correct? So how many years is that? So about 55 years or so, correct? So then this is more recent, isn't it?
Yes.
So the point is that the same message which was given, which is actually eternal, given by the Supreme Lord at the time of creation to Brahma. That is how old the Srimad Bhagavatam is, but it is coming down in parampara. The same message is coming down, but then the various acharyas in the parampara, they add their own realizations to make the message more relevant to the people of that particular age. So Srila Prabhupada is giving us the same message and one gets the same benefit. But then Srila Prabhupada has first of all translated into English from the Sanskrit language. And we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada has added so many examples of contemporary times. Just like in one purport we will see later on, where Prabhupada is speaking about India-China war, Prabhupada speaks about nuclear weapons, Prabhupada speaks about so many modern day issues, cow slaughter and so on and so forth, which you don't find all these things in the previous Acharya's commentaries. So Srila Prabhupada has taken the same message, but he has made the message more relevant to the current day people. And so that's what makes the message more sweeter, more relevant, more a person is able to appreciate the message. So therefore, it's not how old the message is, it is how authentic the message is. That's what is more important. So that is the importance of the parampara system. So the parampara system is there to ensure that the message is transmitted without any change. And that is why the example of the mango being handed down from the highest branch without breaking, the mango is handed down, then one can relish it. So therefore, even though the Srimad Bhagavatam is thousands of years old, but still it is the same message handed down without any change, but at the same time made more relishable and relevant. And so therefore, it's not a question of whether it is thousands of years old or whether it's 300 years old, but what is most important is how authentic the message is coming down without any change.
Thank you, Saint.
Does it?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Dhamvasi Kripapu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
The Mataji was referring this Guru Granth Sahib, but one should always, we can also say that any Granth we read, but we must go to the gist of this thing. Guru Granth Sahib also says that always that the gist is that Ram Bhajo and Govind Bhajo. Not the saying that how old the Granth is. Because the gist is only Govind Bhajo and Ram Bhajo. So the same, I mean, if they even read the Guru Granth Sahib, the ultimate result would come that we should surrender on to the Lord Krishna and to the Govind.
Correct.
We can this way also.
Yes. So yes, definitely they must understand the essence of their own scripture. If one wants to read that, yes, one must definitely understand the essential message of the scripture. That's correct. Okay, fine. So now I think we can proceed ahead. So to the fourth verse. So these first three verses are a prelude to the Srimad Bhagavatam. They are a sort of Manglacharan to the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Vyasadeva is glorifying the Srimad Bhagavatam. He is giving the essential message. What is the Srimad Bhagavatam talking about? Talking about the absolute truth. And who can relish this message of Srimad Bhagavatam? So these three verses are a prelude, a Manglacharan to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And now the Srimad Bhagavatam actually begins, or the scene is being set for the Srimad Bhagavatam we spoke of. So text 4. Nemishe nimisha kshetre rishaya shaunakadaya satram swargaya lokaya sahasra samavasata. Once in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharanya, great sages headed by the sage Shaunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. Okay, so the sages had gathered to perform a sacrifice. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he is referring to the Vaibhava Tantra. It is said that Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, contemplated a great wheel which could enclose the universe. The hub of this great circle was fixed at a particular place known as Naimisharanya. Similarly, there's another reference to the forest of Naimisharanya in the Varapuran, where it is stated that by performance of sacrifice at this place, the strength of demoniac people is curtailed. Thus, Brahmanas preferred Naimisharanya for such sacrificial performances. Okay, so some history about this Naimisharanya. Vishwanath Thakur is mentioning in his commentary, so somebody can read.
Brahma created a wheel in his mind. The rim of wheel is called a Nemi. That place where the rim Nemi fell off, Shir Yate, is called the Nemi Shaya or Nemisha. Vayu Puran describes this. This mental wheel created by me will be released. The place where the rim comes off will be favorable for performing austerities. Having said this and having created the wheel brilliant like the sun in his mind and offering his respect to it, Brahma released that great deity, the wheel. The rejoicing Brahmanas, offering respect to the Lord of the universe, then journeyed to the place where the rim of wheel fell off. That forest became the name as Nemisha, and is worshipped by the sages.
Okay, so this Brahmaji's mental wheel. that he released, and then where the rim fell off, that is called as Naimisha. Aranya means a forest, and that place is very conducive for performing sacrifices. Continue, please.
Having done that, the Lord then spoke to Gaurmukha. The powerful demon was killed in that forest, Aranya, quickly in a moment, Nimisha. Thus, this place is called the Naimisharanya. It will be very suitable for Brahmanas in the future. By using this word with this meaning, it is suggested that one should reside in this place for quickly killing the enemies such as material desire. In the beginning, Shaunaka and the other sages were attached to Sakam Karma. Thus, the verse indicates they performed sacrifice for attaining Swarga. It is well known, however, that by hearing and contemplating various Puranas and other scriptures from Romharshana, they became inquisitive about spiritual life. By association with Suta Goswami, Ugrashavas, they developed a small taste for bhakti.
Okay, so initially these sages were attached to Sakam Karma, going to Swarga and all that. And as you definitely must be knowing the pastime from the Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna book, how Balram comes to Naimisharanya and kills Romaharshan. So initially Romaharshan was speaking various Puranas and other scriptures, and they developed a taste for spiritual life. But Sutta Goswami, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. And that's how all these people, then they actually developed a taste for bhakti. Okay, continue, please.
When they took up bhakti, then their inquisitiveness became weakened and performance of sacrifice for attaining Swarga became false. This is indicated in the following. Kalim agatam agyana kshetre smin vaishnave vayam asina dirgha kshetrena kathayam sakshana hare. Knowing well that the age of Kali has already begun, we are assembled here in the holy place to hear at great length the transcendental message of the Lord, and in this way perform sacrifice for the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.21. The power of bhakti is indicated by the cessation of attachment to prescribed duties which arose in them from hearing Bhagavatam.
Okay, so when they heard the Bhagavatam, then their bhakti became awakened. So the sages of Naimisharanya are also given as an example in the Bhagavad Gita for Jignasu, Artho, Artharthi, Jignasu, Jnani. The sages of Naimisharanya are given as an example for Jignasu. So that's what he says. So when they heard from Sutta Goswami, then their inquisitiveness became weakened. The inquisitiveness to know material subject matters, how to go to Swarga and all that, that became less. And that's how they actually developed an interest in bhakti. And their taste for hearing Bhagavatam increased. Continue. Sorry.
There is another meaning to Swarga, however. Swarga means glorified, Gityate Ga. In Swarga, Swar, the Swargaya, who is praised in Swarga, like the name Ugraya, Urugaya, who is greatly praised, indicates the Lord. His lok is Vaikuntha. Therefore, Swargaya Lokaya means for going to Vaikuntha of the Lord. Animisha, not blinking, in this verse refers to Vishnu, because in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.21 quoted above, the sages themselves identify the place as Kshetre Smin Vaishnave, a place of Vishnu. They applied themselves asata to performing karma, pious prescribed actions, satram, which were to last for 1,000 years. Samaha.
Okay, so there's another meaning of Swargaya. So if you see in the word-to-word meaning, which Srila Prabhupada gives, Srila Prabhupada translates Swargaya as the Lord who is glorified in heaven. Okay, so that is also the meaning of Swargaya. So that is what they were doing. So they were glorifying the Lord, or they were performing the sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord. So both the meanings are there. One meaning of Swarga is that these sages were performing the sacrifice to go to Swarga. That's one meaning. But the other meaning of Swarga is also the Lord who's glorified in Swarga. And so they were performing the sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord, of the Supreme Lord, who's glorified in Swarga. And also in the word-to-word meaning of Nimisha Kshetra. So Naimishe, Nimisha Kshetra. Nimisha Kshetra, proper translates that the spot which is especially a favorite of Vishnu, who does not close his eyelids. So that's the meaning of Nimisha, one who does not close his eyelids, blink his eyelids. So that's also the Supreme Lord. Okay, so they were performing this sacrifice. And then what happened? Text 5. Ta ekada tu munaya pratar huta hutagnaya satkritam sutam asinam paprachur idam adarat. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. So there are two important points that are being highlighted by Srila Prabhupada. One is the first sentence, morning is the best time to hold spiritual services. Why? Why morning is the best time?
Brahma Muhurat, Prabhuji.
Yes, the Brahma Muhurat time. So what's the significance of the Brahma Muhurat?
Basically auspicious time where
mode of goodness is prominent.
Yes, the mode of goodness is prominent, so therefore it is conducive to spiritual activities. Yes. And the other important point is paprachur idam adarat. So they inquired from Sutta Goswami with great respect. So therefore, the last paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada writes that those who listen to the Bhagavatam may put questions to the speaker in order to elicit the clear meaning, but this should not be done in a challenging spirit. One must submit questions with a great regard for the speaker and the subject matter. This is also the way recommended in Bhagavad Gita. So that is Tadvidi Pranipati. One must learn the transit subject by submissive honor reception from the right sources. So that's adarat. The word used here is adarat. So the right attitude towards the speaker, a respectful attitude is very important, because without the correct attitude, one cannot learn. So if one is approaching a spiritual master or a teacher with the mentality that I already know so much, let me see what this person knows. So if one has that attitude and one has a challenging attitude, then one cannot learn much. So one has to approach with the mentality that I do not know anything, so let me try to learn. Prabhupada tells the story, which you may have heard, about two students approaching a Mridanga teacher. So one student approaches the teacher, and the teacher asks him, so did you learn something about playing Mridang before? So the student says, yes, I already learned so much. I know most of it I know, but I just want to know something more. So then the student asks, so how much are the charges for learning the Mridang? The teacher said 200 rupees. So then after some time, another student came. And so again, the teacher asked him, so do you know something about playing Mridang? He said, no, I don't know anything. I'm brand new. So how much will be the fees? So the teacher said 50 rupees. So the previous student came to know that he has been charged more. So he came back to the teacher and asked, I heard that Other student, he doesn't know anything about the mridang, but you're charging him only 50 rupees and I already know so much and you're charging me 200. So what did the teacher say? The teacher said that because you have already learned so much hodgepodge nonsense, I have to do a double work of first of all cleaning all that nonsense and then teaching. But that the other student is like a blank slate. So it's much more easier to teach it. Therefore, less charges for him. So Prabhupada tells the story to make this point that so if we are in that mode that I already know so much, then it's very difficult to learn something. Then it's very difficult to have the proper respectful attitude towards the speaker or the teacher. But on the other hand, Srila Prabhupada often gave the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, how he approached his spiritual master Ishwar Puri. So he said, Guru Mora Murkha Deki. So he considers himself simply a fool, even though he's the Supreme Lord himself, but he considered himself a fool before his spiritual master. And so Srila Prabhupada always explained that that is the right mood in approaching a spiritual master or teacher. So when one has that mood, then one becomes an appropriate recipient to gain the knowledge. So here we find the sages of Naimisharanya, they're having that correct mood, and with great respect, they are approaching, they're asking questions to Sutta Goswami. So now the sages said, text 6, Rishayo Uchu Tvaya Kalu Puranani Setihasani Chanaga Akhyatani Api Aditani Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta. The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in the scriptures, famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. So in these verses 6, 7, and 8, in these verses, the sages are first of all glorifying Sutta Goswami for his wonderful qualities by which he is qualified to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so in these 3 verses, we can learn as to what are the qualifications of a speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the 6th verse, the qualifications they are telling is Akhyatani Api Aditani. And one point is Anagha. Anagha. Anagha means sinless. So they are addressing Sutta Goswami as Anagha, free from all vices. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada begins his purport by saying, a Goswami must be free from all these vices before he can dare sit on the Vyasasana. No one should be allowed to sit on the Vyasasana who's not spotless in character and who's not freed from the above mentioned vices. Okay, so that's the first qualification. That one must be free from all the vices, all the bad habits, all the sinful activities. So only such a person is qualified to speak. Because, as we say, purity is the force. So when there is purity, then the purity affects the consciousness of the hearers. And then their consciousness also can get transformed. And therefore we find Srila Prabhupada apparently spoke the same subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. But how many thousands of people, their lives became transformed by hearing Srila Prabhupada? Why? Because of the purity. So the more the purity, then the more effect it has, because Krishna is pleased. So Krishna accepts an offering from a purified person. So speaking Krishna Katha is also service. And so when the person speaking is pure, then Krishna, he accepts that service with great relish. And because Krishna manifests himself in those words, that those words have great effects in transforming the hearts of the hearers. So in the famous verse, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Uparitam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. So the word Prayatatmana means what? Of one in purified consciousness. So Krishna accepts an offering from one who is in purified consciousness. So when the speaker of Krishna Katha is pure, or to the extent he is pure, Krishna accepts the offering and Krishna manifests himself in those words. And therefore, to the degree the person speaking is pure, it may be the same words, apparently the same message, but it has a greater effect on the consciousness of the hearers because Krishna manifests, or Krishna's mercy manifests in those words. And so therefore, the first qualification they are saying is, Sutta Goswami is anagha, is freed from all sinful activities. The second qualification is akhyatani api aditani. So seti hasani, that means all the itihasas, dharma shastras. He has studied all this. He has not only studied, aditani means well read, and akhyatani means explained. He's not only read, but he has also explained them. So Prabhupada comments on that point in his purport. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Hearing is called Shravan, explaining is called Kirtan. The two processes of Shravan and Kirtan are of primary importance to progressive spiritual life. Only one who has properly grasped the transcendental knowledge from the right source by submissive hearing can properly explain the subject. So Prabhupada says, to hear and explain them is more important than reading them, or only reading, or only hearing. So why do you think this explaining is also important? Why only reading, hearing is not sufficient? One should explain them also. Why?
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji Dandavat. Prabhuji, actually the one who realizes this knowledge can explain. One who has actually understood the topic can explain. Maybe that's fine.
Yes, that's correct. One who has realized, one who has actually understood can explain. That's correct. But here, the point is being made that one who has read, heard, and explained to others is qualified to speak.
Prabhuji, one point I just want to try that when we hear, when we read, when we hear, and when we explain something, then retain with us. And when we, it's about the spiritual knowledge, once we give that to someone, we retain more and it spread like.
Okay, good point. Yes, one can remember more when one wants to explain. I think so we all have that experience. If we want to give a class, when we read here, okay, we read here, we may be attentive to some extent. But when we ourselves have to give a class, what happens? We have to really study the subject matter very seriously, isn't it? Because then I have to explain it to others. So then we really go deep into the subject. We really try to understand the subjects. Correct? Antaryam Balram Prabhu, you were going to say something? Hare Krishna. Something's wrong with the internet, I think. Okay, anyways. So yes, when one has to explain, then one actually goes deep into the subject. And not only that, usually when one explains, I think so there's some problem with the internet connection. It's okay, it's not clear. So when one has to explain, one also actually gets an impetus to practice. Correct? So if one wants to speak about something, then one thinks for oneself, am I practicing? So then one is forced to practice what one is speaking, and that's how one progresses. That's how one makes advancement. So therefore, one who has heard, read, and explained to others, he becomes more qualified because of going deep into the subject matter, trying to practice what he speaks, and then also practicing that gives more realization. And then one can speak with more realization. So that's why both are important. So therefore, whenever one gets an opportunity to preach, one should preach. Preaching doesn't mean one should have 1,000 people sitting in front of you, but basically it means that explaining the subject matter to somebody else, it could be even one person, doesn't matter. But when one tries to explain the subject matter to some other person, one actually benefits oneself. Okay, that is the 6th verse. Now 7th verse. Yani Veda Vidam Shreshto Bhagavan Bhadrainaha Anyecha Munaya Suta Paravara Vido Vidu. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead, and you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. So here, two more qualifications of Sutta Goswami are being mentioned. One qualification is Veda Vidam Shreshta. He's Shreshta, he's senior most. Okay, that's one qualification. So Srila Prabhupada explains in other purports the meaning of the word Vriddha or Shreshta. So there are two types of Vriddha. One is Vriddha by age, another is Vriddha by knowledge. So here, of course, Sutta Goswami is definitely Shreshta in terms of knowledge and could be age also. But the other important qualification is Paravara Vidaha. So amongst the learned scholars, one was conversant with physical and metaphysical knowledge. So he was conversant with the philosophies of all the other sages. That's why Prabhupada in the purport, he says that one can sit on the Vyasasana only after being conversant in all systems of philosophy, so that one can present fully the theistic views of the Bhagavatam in defiance of all the other systems. So why one should also know something about the other philosophies, because then one can present the Bhagavatam philosophy in comparison to all the other philosophies and show the superiority of the Bhagavad philosophy. Okay. So just like we find in Srila Prabhupada's books, we not only find the Bhagavad philosophy of pure devotional service, we find the Bhagavatam itself, and Srila Prabhupada in his purports. He also speaks about all the other philosophies, just like in Bhagavad Gita also. Bhagavad Gita also, we find Krishna is not only speaking about Bhakti Yoga, he's also speaking about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. He's speaking about worshipping the Devatas. He's speaking about all this. Why? He could have spoken only about Bhakti Yoga, isn't it? Because the goal is Bhakti Yoga. Why is speaking about all these other things? Because then one can understand the glory of Bhakti Yoga by comparing it with the other yoga systems. By comparative analysis, the glory of a thing becomes magnified. Just like you have experience when companies want to advertise their product, what do they do?
They survey that what other products are available in the market.
Yes, and they show how, just like if there are washing machines. So then a particular company who's advertising their washing machine, they show how their washing machine has some better aspects than other washing machines of other companies, correct? They show that comparison. So similarly, By comparison, one can understand the glory of a thing better. And that's what Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam are doing. And so therefore, knowing about other philosophies is also important so that one understands, so that one can compare the Bhagavad philosophy with all the other philosophies. So one may not know the details, one should at least know something. Just like Mayavad. So Prabhupada presents so much about Mayavad philosophy in his books. Especially you can see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita purports. Why? So that one becomes accomplished to defeat Mayavad. So it is said that sometimes, you can see this in Prabhupada's conversations also. We find that sometimes Srila Prabhupada would take the role of a devil's advocate. He would take the role of a Mayavadi and he would make a devotee argue with him. So when Srila Prabhupada would take the role of Mayavadi, he would be so expert in presenting Mayavad that he would defeat the devotee. And then there would be role reversal. Then Srila Prabhupada would take the role of a devotee and the devotee would take the role of Mayavadi. And then Prabhupada would defeat him also. Because Prabhupada was expert in both. He was expert in Bhakti also, he was expert in Mayavad also. So in order to defeat the other philosophies, then one should know at least something about the other philosophies. Okay, so these are two more qualifications in this verse. Now in the 8th verse, Vettatvam saumya tatsarvam tatvatastad anugrahat bruyu snigdasya shishasya guravo guhyam apyuta. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. Please do the purport.
The secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting the sincere blessings. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has sung in this famous 8 stanzas on the spiritual master as follows. I offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Only by his satisfaction can one please the personality of Godhead. And when he is dissatisfied, there is only havoc, the path of spiritual realization. It is essential, therefore, that the disciple be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sruta Goswami fulfilled all these qualifications as a disciple, and therefore was endowed with all favors by his learned and self-realized spiritual masters, such as Srila Vyasadeva and others. Sages of Nimish Aranya, they are confident that Sruta Goswami was bona fide, therefore they were anxious to hear from him.
Okay, so here the important qualifications mentioned are Bruyu will tell. So why he's qualified to tell? Snigdasya Shishyasya, because he was submissive disciple. He was submissive to his spiritual masters. So because he was submissive to his spiritual masters, the spiritual masters were pleased with him. And when they were pleased, tad anugrahat, they bestowed their mercy on him. And because of that mercy, Gurava Guhyam, the secrets of the Shastras were revealed to him because of having pleased the spiritual master. So this is the way to receive spiritual knowledge. So spiritual knowledge is revealed by blessings. So on the spiritual path, simply bookish knowledge is not sufficient. There's a beautiful purport you can read in the Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, 8th verse. Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, simply bookish knowledge without realization is useless. So why simply bookish knowledge is useless? Because one cannot understand the supreme absolute truth simply by bookish knowledge. Because the understanding of the Supreme Lord comes by revelation. Other Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriye sevon mukhehi jivvado swayam eva sprutyada. One cannot understand the Supreme Lord by one's blunt material senses. Only when the senses become purified by service, then the Supreme Lord reveals himself. So when one renders sincere service, one has the proper service attitude towards Guru and Krishna, towards the spiritual masters, then Guru and Krishna are pleased. When Guru is pleased, Krishna is pleased. Yasya prasada, bhagavad prasado. And then when the Lord is pleased, then the Lord reveals himself to the devotee. And therefore, the revelation, the true understanding of the Supreme Lord, Tattvataha, the word Tattvataha is used here also. So, Tattvataha, one can understand the Lord Tattvataha only by mercy, only by grace. And so therefore, it is not possible to understand the scriptures, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Lord simply by reading oneself, simply by academically studying. Therefore, one has to serve. One has to serve the spiritual master. One has to purify oneself by the service attitude. One has to please the Vaishnavas. Then the Lord is pleased, and then one can actually understand. All right. So that was the qualification of Suta Goswami. He served his spiritual masters very submissively, and therefore he received their blessings, and by their blessings, the secrets, the guhya. So as Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, guhya tamam, this knowledge about bhakti is guhya tamam, most confidential, raja vidya, raja guhyam. So knowledge of Krishna, of bhakti is always very confidential and is revealed only to a sincere devotee. As we sing in the Guru Puja every day, what we sing? Divya Gyan Ridhe Prakashita. The knowledge is revealed within the heart by the blessings of Guru and Krishna. So these are the qualifications of Suta Goswami, which made him qualified to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is what the sages of Naimisharanya are mentioning. Okay, Prabhupada's lecture on these verses, please read.
And the speaker, Suta Goswami, was given his due respect, the Vyasasan. Here it is said, Satkritam. Satkritam means with due respects. The welcoming, receiving, Satkritam, Sutam Ashinam. The speaker must sit very comfortably, Sutam Ashinam. Sukha means certainly he should not feel any inconvenience. Then the speaking will go on nicely. Satkritam, Sutam Ashinam Prapachu. Then the questions, Idam Adarat. The question should be put not by challenging, by Adarat, with great adoration. I beg to submit, this is my question. Can you tell me like this? No, that is challenge. Very submissively, Tad Vidhi Pranipatena. The question should be put by surrender. If somebody challenges, he will never be able to understand. The question has to be very submissive. Here it is also said, Adarat. You will find Arjuna was questioning Krishna. And at the end, I have heard like this, if you think that I am fit to understand it, you can please explain it. Similarly, Parikshit Maharaj also asking submissively, if you think I can understand, then please explain. This is the process of question.
Yes, so we discussed these points. Okay, another lecture. He is especially talking about this morning time. Okay, read this. Somebody
yes.
Else.
Okay.
Somebody else can read.
Yes, this is very important. Therefore, we are insisting everyone to rise early in the morning. Even though sometimes we rise early in the morning, we compensate in other time. This should be practiced, you see, reducing eating, sleeping, mating, that is a spiritual advancement. This is the test. The more you reduce, the idea is to bring it to nil. Just like Goswamis, they did it. Nidra
Vijito.
They conquered over sleeping and eating and mating. Conquered over. So our ideal is we are fighting with Maya. So the fighting, we will conquer over Maya when we see that we are not disturbed by these four processes: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This is the test. Nobody has to take certificate from anyone else how he is spiritually advancing. He can test himself. How far I have conquered over these four things: eating, sleeping, mating, and that's all. That is the test. So it is not required that don't eat, don't sleep, don't, but minimize it. At least regulate it. Try. This is called austerity, tapasya. I want to sleep, but still I shall regulate it. I want to eat, but I must regulate it. I want sense enjoyment, so I must regulate it. That is whole Vedic civilization.
As we were reading that one of the qualifications of Sutta Goswami was his anaga. So he's sinless, he has conquered over the senses as Goswami. So this is important to regulate all these bodily activities to reduce. Okay, read this please.
You have read, not only you have read, but you have described. Description means you read something unless you fully assimilate. Understand, you cannot describe it. So two things. Simply reading will not help us. When we shall be able to preach, the reading matter. Doesn't matter whether in the same language or in my own language. It doesn't matter. That is wanted. Akhya tani adhitani. Adhitani means you have read and you have explained.
Yes, so only when one understands, assimilates, to some degree realizes the subject matter, then one can explain. So both are important, reading and explain. Okay. This is this one. Okay, read this.
Spiritual well-being. That is our Krishna consciousness movement.
Spiritual well-being, that is our Krishna consciousness movement. That if the society becomes Krishna
just one second.
or spiritually advanced.
Hare Krishna, just 1 second. So this is actually based on a statement which Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to the next verse. So we'll just read the translation and the purport to the next verse, the 9th verse, where from the 9th verse onwards, the questions of the sages is beginning. So the 9th verse, we'll just recite the verse. Tatra tatranjasa ayushman bhavata tad vinishchitam pumsam ekam tata shreyas tanna shamsitum arhasi. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. So here Srila Prabhupada writes the statement, spiritual well-being is automatically followed by material well-being. The acharyas therefore give directions in spiritual well-being for people in general. So now Prabhupada is actually explaining this statement. The spiritual well-being is automatically followed by material well-being. Now read.
Spiritual well-being, that is our Krishna consciousness movement. That if the society becomes Krishna conscious or spiritually advanced, the so-called material advancement will automatically be there. There is no scarcity. For example, take for a practical example, we have got about 100 centers. So we are simply engaged in Krishna consciousness business. So far, our material necessities are concerned, we are not badly situated. We are living in a nice house. We are eating nice food stuff. We have got nice dress and the devotees look very nice, bright faces. What is the wrong there? What is the wrong there? But they are not busy for earning money or going to the office or going to the factory or so many other sources of revenue. They are depending on Krishna and Krishna is supplying them. Krishna says, Yoga prasemam.
Kshemam, yoga kshemam.
Yoga prasemam vahameham. Tesam.
Tesham nityabhiyuktanam.
Yoga kshem vahameham.
Okay, read.
Tesam nitya bhayuktanam. Bhagavad Gita 9.22. If anyone is completely engaged in spiritual advancement of life, then Yoga Kshem, Vaham Meham, I take charge of Yoga Kshem. Yoga Kshem means what is not in possession, to supply that thing. And Shem means that is already possessed, to protect or for welfare activities. So just like if a child is completely dependent on the father parents, the parents have the sense that my child has got to bother.
No,
The
no,
child doesn't know
my
how
child
to ask from the.
requires. You have missed a line.
My child requires at this time. Sorry. My child requires at this time this thing. They're already there. He has got to bother. The child doesn't know to ask from the parents, but the things are there. Similarly, our Krishna, he's supplying everything, everyone. Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. Actually, Krishna is supplying everything.
Okay, fine. So we should be convinced about this fact that material well-being follows spiritual well-being, not the other way around. So when one pleases Krishna, then Krishna automatically supplies everything. Yoga kshemam vahami aham. Krishna says, aham, I personally protect what one has and provide what one lacks. So that's how Krishna reciprocates with his devotees. Okay. So now in the 10th verse, the sages are describing the qualities of the age of Kali Yuga in this famous verse, which we have heard many times. Prayanalpayusha sabhya kalav asmin yuge janaha manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hi upadrutaha. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So the sages of Naimishan are very much concerned about the people of Kali Yuga because the people of Kali Yuga have all these qualities which are not so auspicious. And so they're concerned, how will the people of Kali Yuga, they understand the goal of life? How will they understand their true well-being? And that is why they're posing these various questions to Sutta Goswami. So we're not going through the purport in detail. You can read it on your own. So here a few essential points are mentioned from the purport. So Prabhupada says, Alpa Ayusha. So he says overeating, over-sense gratification, over-dependence on others' mercy and artificial standards of living sap the very vitality of human energy. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. So these are some of the reasons why the duration of life is shortened in Kali Yuga. Because as Prabhupada says, unregulated habits, that's one of the main reasons. Manda means slow, faulty, lazy. Sumanda matayo. Due to bad system of education, men have no desire for self-realization. And even if they come to know about it, they unfortunately become victims of misguided teachers. So that's how they become misguided. And Manda Bhagya, in this age, men are victims not only of different political creeds and parties, but also of many different types of sense gratificative diversions, cinema, sports, gambling clubs, mundane libraries, bad associations, smoking, drinking, cheating, and so on. And so therefore they're very unfortunate, Manda Bhagya and Upadrita, always disturbed. Their minds are always disturbed, full of anxieties. So Vishwanath Thakur, is commenting on this verse. Please read.
You should hear everything from my mouth. Then you can decide what is the best is. The sages reply to this verse, O honorable sage, you who know what is suitable for time and place. In Kali Yuga, people are generally short-lived. If they have long life by chance, then they are lazy to investigate spiritual topics. Even if someone is not lazy, then he is unintelligent. Even if someone is intelligent, he is unfortunate, for he is devoid of association with devotees to teach the highest actions. Even if someone has association of devotees is afflicted, under the control of application from sickness and other problems, he doesn't get the time to hear from the mouth of the devotee. Or if he does hear, he cannot discern the highest goal for the human being and then carry out actions to attain it. Or the sequence of qualities can mean that all people have all the bad qualities.
Okay, so people may have all the bad qualities or they may have some of these qualities. So in any case, so therefore the sages are saying it's very difficult for the people in Kali Yuga to understand what is best. So you only tell us what is best for these people in the age of Kali Yuga. So, okay, fine. Okay, so here from this verse onwards, from the 9th verse onwards, we find these questions, the 6 sages, which the sages of Naimisharanya asked Sutta Goswami. So the 6 questions are these. Okay. So the first question is, what is the ultimate good for people? Sorry. Now this is automatically, it goes to the next one. So here, the first question is, what is the ultimate good for the people? That is in the 9th verse. And the answer to this question is in 1.2.6. Okay, so this is the first question. Now the next question is in the 11th verse. Okay, so the 11th verse, I'm just reading the translation. There are many varieties of scriptures, and in all of them, there are many prescribed duties which can be learnt only after many years of study in their various divisions. Therefore, O sage, please select the essence of all these scriptures and explain it for the good of all living beings, that by such instruction, their hearts may be fully satisfied. Okay, so the second question is, what is the essence of all the scriptures? So, and I explain that for the benefit of all the living beings. And the answer to that is 1.2.7. The third question is 1.1.12. So the third question is, all blessings unto you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of Godhead appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva. So there's a third question. For what purpose did Lord Krishna appear in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva? And the answer to this is in 1.2.34. And of course, in the 10th canto, we read about the purpose of Lord Krishna's descent. So that is the third question. The fourth question is in the 17th verse. What kind of pastimes does expansions perform in relation to creation? So the 17th verse translation is, his transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please therefore speak to us who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. But this is, specifically referring to his expansions in relation to creation. Prabhupada is mentioning that in his purport. So these are his pastimes in relationship to creation. And the answer to this is 1.2.30. And the fifth question is in the 18th verse. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord of the Supreme Controller performed by his internal power. So these are his Leela Avtaras, the various incarnations. And all the various other incarnations also. So the entire third chapter of this first canto is an answer to this fifth question. And the sixth question is the 23rd verse. The 23rd verse, that is the last verse of the chapter. Since Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. And the answer to that is in 1.3.43. So these are the 6 questions of the sages. So this is the essence of this first chapter, basically. And there are one or two more important verses, which we will go through after a break. So we'll just take a break for 10 minutes. And then there are 2 or 3 important verses from the first chapter, and then we'll go on to the second chapter. Okay? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, can we begin?
I'm not sure for others.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
I think we have asked some questions on the chat window. If it's the right time to discuss about them, you can please help me with these questions.
Okay. Okay, so here there's a question. We read that a speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam must be freed from vices. How do we understand Romaharshan as the principal teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam? As it's mentioned that Romaharshan was not speaking on Bhagavatam. He was speaking on other scriptures. So maybe Bhagavatam included, but he was speaking on Itihasas, Puranas. He was speaking various scriptures. He was not like a principal teacher of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Is it okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I just remembered that so Vyasdev had designated him as let's say the principal teacher for Puranas. Is that what you're saying? That not Srimad Bhagavatam?
Where is it mentioned that he was a principal teacher?
I mean, so Vyasdev had designated different teachers for different categories of knowledge.
Right. That comes later on. Yes, but he was given some portion of the Puranas or Itihas or something like that was designated to him for him to expand on that. But in any case, he was not like the principal teacher of any of the Shastras like that. But definitely he was a scholarly person. There was no doubt about his scholarship. But then but Lord Balram wanted to show that simply scholarship is not enough. As we have been discussing also, that along with understanding the Shastras, there must be realization, there must be character, that all must be there. And that's what Lord Balram wanted to show. And that's what Lord Balram says when he sees that Romaharshan is not standing up. Then he says that even though he is a great scholar, a direct disciple of Vyasadeva, but he has no good qualities like humility. And so I think so we discussed this point last time also. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to the last verse of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the study of the Vedas is not simply meant for the recreation of armchair speculators, but for the formation of character. So this is the goal of the study of the scriptures. That is, there must be a transformation of the character. There must be a transformation of the consciousness. That is the purpose. So the purpose of reading the scriptures is not scholarship. And that's what Lord Balaram wanted to show. So no doubt Romaharshan was a great scholar, but his character was lacking.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So you have asked all these 3 questions?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So the second question, also in context of ISKCON, how do we relate to this qualification for a speaker that yes, we're free from all vices? As we expand as an organization, we have speakers at various levels preaching. How do we relate to this principle with the current times and the context? So yes, so therefore, one may not be totally free from all vice, but at least one must be sincerely endeavoring for that. So Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita defines a pure devotee as one who is following the process of pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada defines a liberated soul as one who is following a liberated soul, though he may not be on the liberated platform. So the point is that even though one may not be totally free from all vice, but if one is sincerely attempting to do that, then the sincerity is appreciated. So then it is up to the leaders or the authorities, the spiritual authorities of the institution, to see that the speakers of the Srimad Bhagavatam are at least sincere in their attempts to purify themselves, even though they may not be on the 100% purified plan. Does it help?
Yes, Prabhuji, that makes sense. Makes sense. You can go ahead.
Because if we would say that only those who are 100% purified can sit on the Vyasasana, then probably we won't have too many Bhagavatam speakers. Or maybe Prabhupada will have to give the class every day. Okay, we discussed that one needs to serve the spiritual master to get the best of what we hear. How do we see in current context where devotees may hear from several senior devotees whom we don't directly serve? Yes. So, of course, we may not be directly serving them, but by serving the institution, by serving Srila Prabhupada's mission, ultimately everyone within ISKCON is serving Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya. So whatever service we render in any ISKCON center, anywhere in the world, ultimately we're rendering services to Srila Prabhupada. So from whomever we may hear within ISKCON, it doesn't matter, because as far as service is concerned, we are serving Srila Prabhupada and his representatives.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, fine. So any other questions on what we have discussed so far?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
We were in one of the verses we were reading that for the 1.1.10, O learned world, in this age, in this iron age of Kali, man have so Prabhuji, is the Bhagavatam been spoken in the age of Kali? How to understand?
No, this conversation is taking place at the beginning of Kali Yuga.
Okay.
This conversation between Shaunakadi Rishi and Sutta Goswami, this is taking place at the beginning of Kali, after the death of Parikshit. Anything else?
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, in text 10, we heard one of the characteristic or one of the reasons for Alpayusha was over dependence on another's mercy. So that I would like to, Prabhuji.
Okay, over dependence on another's mercy means, as Srila Prabhupada explains, that in Kali Yuga, no one acts independently. Independently in the sense that no one is self-sufficient. So Srila Prabhupada explains that unless one gets a job, one cannot do anything. Everyone, and that shows that everyone is a Shudra. So Shudra means what? Shudra, he wants employment. That's the quality of a Shudra. Shudra needs employment from a master. And so and Prabhupada also compares this to the dog who goes from door to door begging for roti. So similarly, these days, people also get certificate and they go begging with that certificate from company to company to get employment. And without employment, then practically they're useless. So there's so much of over-dependence. In the Vedic times, we find, except for the Shudras, all the other three Varnas were self-sufficient. The Brahmanas were self-sufficient. They would teach and depend on Dakshina. The Kshatriyas, they would collect taxes. That's how they would live. And the Vaishyas, they would grow their food and sell whatever is excess. And so all the three Varnas were self-sufficient. But these days, it's not like that. So there's over-dependence. And then when one is over-dependent on somebody else, then one has to act according to the whims of the other person. So that's what we find. So if the master says, that's what we find in today's society, isn't it? If the master says, take a bribe, what the servant has to do. He has to do it. Why? Because he's dependent on that person. So that's how everyone becomes forced to do the wrong things, because one is so over-dependent. So then if the master is corrupt, the servant has to do the correct.
Yes, Prabhuji. Wonderful. Thank you.
Right.
Nice.
Okay, Rastraman Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for allowing me. I have a doubt regarding the same point. If in this Kali Yuga only, if we are self-employed, if we are running our own business, we are not depending on others, then what would you say for those people?
No, that's just one of the qualities. It does not mean that the other qualities don't exist. That's one of the bad qualities of Kali Yuga. So, okay, even if somebody is sort of self-dependent or self-employed, but then all the other qualities may still be there. Right?
Means you want to say that some way or the other, the person will be definitely lacking in some or the other qualities.
Yes, yes.
Okay, bro. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, fine. So if there are no more questions, we're moving ahead. So everyone understood those 6 questions which the sages have asked? Okay. Fine. So we'll just go through 1 or 2 more important verses within this first chapter. As they're asking these questions, okay. We're going to the 14th verse. So in the 13th verse, they say, "O Sutta Goswami, we're eager to learn about the personality of God and its incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, acharyas, for one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them." So there, the sages are requesting Sutta Goswami to speak about the Lord and his incarnations. In that purport also, Prabhupada makes a few important statements. The first condition is that the audience must be very sincere and eager to hear. Okay, this is the first condition of the audience. Of course, we read that in the previous verse also. And the transcendental message of the Absolute is not understandable by those who are materially absorbed.
Excuse me, Prabhuji,
so that is the... Huh?
Are you sharing your screen?
No. I'm reading from the book.
Okay.
This is the 13th verse purport. Okay, so those who are materially absorbed cannot understand. And therefore, under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, one becomes gradually purified. So one has to become purified. The more one becomes purified from the material absorption, the more one can understand the subject matter. And therefore, one must be in the chain of disciplic succession and learn the spiritual art of submissive hearing. So here, in the 13th verse, they are requesting Sutta Goswami to speak about the Lord and his incarnations. And so in the 14th verse, they are glorifying the Lord, and especially they're glorifying the Lord's holy name. So this is an important verse. Apanna samsmritim goram yannama vivashogrinan tata sadhyo vimucheta yad vibeti swayam bhayam. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. Okay, so that is the glory of the holy name of the Lord. That's the glory of the Lord. Therefore, they are saying we're very eager to hear about the Lord and his various pastimes and his various incarnations. And the 15th verse is also glorifying the Lord. They're glorifying the Lord by glorifying those who take shelter of the Lord. 15th verse. Yat pada samshraya sutta munaya prashamayanaha sadhya puranti upasprishta swardhunyapo anusevaya. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use. So in other words, they're glorifying the Lord by glorifying those who take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. They're saying those who take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet are so powerful that they purify anyone who come in contact with them immediately. Sadhya. Then what to speak of the Lord? If such is the power of those who take shelter of the Lord, then what to speak of the Lord? So that is why they're so interested in hearing about the Lord and his pastimes. And so Prabhupada writes, one can be sanctified at once by the mercy of the pure devotee of the Lord. Further down he says, to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord means to take shelter of the pure devotees. And such pure devotees are addressed by the names Prabhupada, Vishnupad, which indicates such devotees to be the representatives of the lotus feet of the Lord. And such devotees of the Lord are honored equally with the Lord because they are engaged in the most confidential service of the Lord, for they deliver out of the material world the fallen souls whom the Lord wants to return home back to Godhead. Such pure devotees are better known as vice lords. Interesting word. Just like there were viceroys who were representatives of the King of England. So similarly, vice lords, according to the revealed scriptures. And therefore, in the next verse, they are asking a rhetoric question. Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? Okay, because the Lord is so glorious. So then who is that foolish person who does not want to hear the glories of the Lord? And then the 19th verse, that's also an important verse. So in the 19th verse, again, the sages are showing their great eagerness to hear. Vayam tu na vidrapyama uttama shloka vikrame yashranvatam rasagyanam swadu swadu pade pade. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. So they're saying we will never tire. Na vitrupyama. We'll never tire hearing about Uttama Shloka, Vikrame, his glorious activities, adventures. Why? Because Swadu, Swadu, Pade, Pade. Every moment we are relishing these pastimes. So as Prabhupada writes that these Rama and Mahabharata Puranas are histories of bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of the incarnation of the Lord, and therefore remain fresh even after repeated readings. For example, anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly throughout his whole life and yet find in them new light of information. Mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic, inasmuch as the spirit is dynamic and matter is static. Those who have developed a taste for understanding the transcendental subject matter are never tired of hearing such narrations. One is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. And Prabhupada's famous example, he would always say that, just like the holy name of the Lord, one can keep on chanting 24 hours. Like Ekadashi, we have 24 hours kirtan, so devotees can chant. But if one chants Mr. John, one will be tired. So that's the nature of spiritual subject matters. And then in the 20th verse, they're glorifying the Supreme Lord again and his pastimes. Kritavan kila karmani saha ramena keshava atimartyani bhagavan guda kapata manusha. Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked, he performed many superhuman acts. Okay, so even though Krishna and Balaram, they appeared like ordinary human beings, atimartyani, but that was only a mask to cover their real godhoods. Guda kapata manusha. So actually, they are Bhagavan, Atimartyani Bhagavan. And so we understand that by the superhuman activities they perform. Okay, fine. So that's about the first chapter. Fine. So we are going to the second chapter. Okay, so there's a second chapter overview. Everyone can see?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine.
Yes,
So
Prabhuji.
the first 11 verses, first 5, Sutta offers his respects to Shukadev and Vyasa and appreciates the sage's inquiries. 6 to 11 is pure devotion to Krishna as the supreme dharma. And 12 to 22 is hearing Bhagavatam, the process of achieving pure devotion to Krishna. And 23 to 34, 23 to 29, Krishna, Vasudeva, the supreme goal of life. And 30 to 34, Purushartharas, create and maintain. So we'll try to finish the first 11 verses today. Okay, so the first verse, let's recite. So chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. Text 1. Vyasa uvacha iti samprashna samrishto vipranam romaharshani pratipucha vachastesham pravaktam upachakrame. Ugrashrava, that is Sutta Goswami, the son of Romaharshan, being fully satisfied with the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. Text 2. Sutta uvacha yam pravrajantam anupetam apeta krityam dvaipayano virahakatara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya taravo bhinedus tam sarvabhuta hridayam munim anantosmi. Srila Sutta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage Shukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son!' Indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father." Srila Prabhupada and the purport is especially speaking about the purificatory ceremonies which Shukadeva Goswami did not undergo. And so he's speaking about these various stages of sanskaras which any human being, especially of the higher order, should undergo. So as Srila Prabhupada in the second paragraph is saying, the spiritual master accepts only the sincere inquirer as his disciple and gives him the sacred thread. In this way, a man becomes twice born or dvija. And then after qualifying as a dvija, one may study the Vedas. And after becoming well versed in the Vedas, one becomes a vipra. A vipra or a qualified brahmana thus realizes the absolute and makes further progress in spiritual life until he reaches the Vaishnava stage. The Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate status of a brahmana. A progressive brahmana must necessarily become a Vaishnava, for a Vaishnava is a self-realized learned brahmana. So these are the various stages. So there is dvija, then vipra, or a brahmana, brahma janati iti brahmana. So a brahmana is supposed to know the Brahman, the absolute truth. Sanskarat bhave dvija. So by the sanskara of diksha, accepting diksha from the bona fide spiritual master, one becomes dvija, twice born. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, they can become dvijas, not the Shudras. So then, Veda Patat, the Vipra. So one who studies the Vedas becomes a Vipra. And then he becomes Brahmana. He understands the absolute truth. And then finally Vaishnava. So these are all various stages. Now coming to the verse proper, here Sutta Goswami is first of all glorifying his spiritual master Shukadeva Goswami. So that's always what a speaker does when he begins. So we offer prayers. We offer prayers to the spiritual masters. We offer prayers to the Supreme Lord to seek their blessings. And that's exactly what Sutta Goswami is doing as he is beginning to answer the 6 questions of the sages. So first of all, he's offering respects, he's glorifying, and he's seeking blessings of his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami. So this verse is basically a glorification of Shukadeva Goswami. So he's saying that how Yam pravrajantam anupetam apeta krityam. So pravrajantam means so to become a sannyasi, to become to join the renounced order. As he was going away, anupetam means without undergoing the various reformatory ceremonies and without performing his krityam, his prescribed duties. So he went into the forest, pravrajantam. So as he was going into the forest, viraha dvaipayana means Vyasadeva. He was feeling viraha kataraha. So he was feeling great feelings of separation. So as we know, Shukdev, he was in the womb of his mother for some 12 years, some say 14 years or whatever. So for so many years, he was in the womb because he was already Brahman realized. He was meditating on the impersonal Brahman and he had no material desires because he was perfectly Brahman realized. He knew that I am spirit soul, I have nothing to do with this body. So because he had no material desires, so therefore he didn't want to come out of his mother's womb to be entrapped by the material energy and develop material desires. But in any case, so because then Vyasadeva, he offered praise to the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord gave him assurance that he will not be affected by the material energy as he came out. And as soon as he came out, then he immediately left for the forest. So Vyasadeva was in great anticipation. He was waiting for his son to come out of his mother's womb. But before he could have any loving interactions with him, Shukdev just went into the forest. And so, as a natural father, Vyasadeva was feeling great feelings of separation, viraha katara. And so therefore, he followed his son. And following his son, Ajuhava, he was exclaiming, Putra iti, Putra, Putra. He was calling out to his son. Why? Because Tanmayataya, Tanmay, being Tanmay means being absorbed. He was absorbed in feelings of separation for his son. But as he was calling out Putra, Putra, what was the result? Tarava abhinedu. Only the Tarava, only the trees responded. Only the trees responded. So unto him, such a Shukdev Goswami, who Sarva Bhuta Hridayam, who has entered into the hearts of all the living entities, to such a Munim, to such a Shukdev Goswami, Anata Asmi, I offer my obeisances. Okay, let's read this commentary. Please read. Somebody who has not yet read can read.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay.
The institution of Varna and Acharma prescribed.
No. Read from the screen.
Okay. Shukdeva had departed, leaving everything. Pravarjanantam. Though he was nearby, Vyasa could not catch him. Anupetam. He had not received his sacred thread. Apeta Krityam. Vyasa called out the protective words, O protracted words, O son, but not only his father had great affection for him. Padma Purana says, Yena charita harish tena tarpitani jagnanti api rajayanti janayasta tatra jangama he
okay, read the translation.
He who worships the Lord pleases all living entities. All moving and non-moving beings are controlled by him. Thus, even the trees lamented, being completely attached to Sukdeva. Tanmataya. Mayataya. The trees, since they were facing him, called out in the form of echoes, O son. When a person is attached to something, he is said to be Tanmaya. The Srimaya means a person who is attached to a woman. This affection for a person who resides in the mind of all living beings, like the attraction of for all the attractive deity of the Lord is not a material illusion. Thus it is not a fault of Vyasa seem to lose his sense of discrimination.
Okay, fine. So he's mentioning that how even the trees were greatly attached to Shukadev. He's quoting this verse from the Padma Puran, which says that how if one worships the Supreme Lord, Yena Archito Haris, if one is worshipping Hari, then he automatically pleases all the living entities. Jangama, Sthavara, both the moving and the non-moving beings are Rajanti. Rajan is controlled by such a person. Why? Because again, the same philosophical understanding that if one pleases the Supreme Lord, then all the parts and parcels are automatically pleased. Just like watering the root of the tree, then all the parts of the tree are nourished. So one who pleases the Supreme Lord automatically pleases all the living entities. So here, just like Vyasadeva was feeling great separation from Shukadev, even the trees were feeling great separation from Shukadev. And so just like Vyasa is calling out, O Putra, the trees also were calling out, O Putra. Of course, it was an echo, but it was not just an echo. The trees were also feeling great separation from Shukadev. That's what he's explaining. Okay, so this verse is quoted. Okay, somebody else continue.
Or there is another meaning. The trees as another form of Shukadev, Tanmayataya, called out in echo, O son, to answer Vyas. If I'm your son, then you're also my son. Illusion is the cause of thinking. I am the father, you are the son. Who is the son of whom? Who is the father of whom? Enlightening Vyas about this truth, they hint, why are you bewildered? They hint, why are you bewildered? For establishing attachment to Shukadev, it is then described that he had entered into the minds of all living entities, Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munim, by the power of his yoga. That being so, let him also enter my heart and speak the Bhagavatam through my mouth. He who can enter into the dull trees and pacify his father by answering back can also enter my heart and please the intellects of all the hearers by the Bhagavatam. Implied here is the rule that at the time of lecturing, other speakers of Bhagavatam should also meditate in this way.
Yes. So the other meaning, so Vishnu Thakur is explaining another meaning of the facts that the trees are also calling O Putra. So he's saying that the trees as another form of Shukadev called out in echo. That means Vyasadeva is calling out O Putra, and Shukadev is also calling O Putra. So in other words, Shukadev is trying to tell Vyasa, you consider me as your son, but you are also my son. If I am your son, you are also my son. So who's the son of whom? Who's the father of whom? Because all these relationships of father and son are only on the bodily platform. So therefore, indirectly, Shukdev is telling Vyasadeva, why are you on the bodily concept? And in the bodily concept, you're simply attached to me as your son. But the fact is, who is father, who is son? All these are simply temporary bodily relationships. That is what Shukdev wanted to tell Vyasadeva. And so therefore, as Vyasadeva is calling out O Putra, Shukdev in the form of the trees, in echo is also calling out O Putra, as if Vyasa is his Putra. Okay, so that's the other meaning that is being explained. So one meaning of O Putra is the trees are calling out O Putra because the trees are also feeling separation from Shukadev. And the other meaning is Shukadev is also calling out O Putra to Vyasadeva. And so the other important point is Sarva Bhuta Hridaya Munim. So Shukadev, he has entered into the minds of all the living entities because of being such a powerful Jnani, yogi. And so he had captured the minds of all the living entities. And so therefore, Sutta Goswami is praying to Shukadev that just like you have entered into the hearts of all the living entities, please enter into my mouths and speak the Bhagavatam. If you can enter into the dull trees, then you also enter into my mouth to speak the Bhagavatam. So in this way, he's glorifying and praying to Shukadeva Goswami to actually give him the words to speak the Bhagavatam. So we find in Parampara, this is always the case. So therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti is saying that all the speakers of the Bhagavatam should also meditate in this way and pray to the previous acharyas. That's why we offer prayers before speaking the Bhagavatam. It's not simply a ritual, but actually one should pray, begging for the mercy, begging for the blessings, so that one gets the power to speak. And of course, this can also be generalized. It applies to any service. Before performing any service, one can pray to be empowered to do that service. Just like Srila Prabhupada was praying on the Jaladuta. Exactly the same words, similar words. So Srila Prabhupada was also praying, I do not have the words to transform the hearts of these people who are immersed in Rajas and Tamas. You please give me the words by which these people's hearts can be transformed. And similarly, we'll find later on in the second canto, in the 4th chapter, when Parikshit Maharaj asked questions to Shukadeva Goswami, before replying, Shukadeva is also praying to the Supreme Lord in many verses. But then finally he prays, my dear Lord, just as you entered into all the elements at the time of creation, you please enter into my words so that I can answer the questions of Parikshit Maharaj. So we find this is parampara. So a Vaishnava never thinks that I'm qualified, I'm great. Even Rupa Goswami, before writing the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he's also praying, I'm unqualified to write. So therefore he's praying to the Lord. Similarly, we find Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's also thinking I'm unqualified. So these greatest of Vaishnavas, but they're thinking themselves unqualified. And they're depending on the mercy of the Lord and the Vaishnavas. So that's the mood of a Vaishnava. Similarly, we find in Bhagavad Gita, right in the 1st chapter, there is Kapidwaja. There's Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna, Arjuna's chariot. So in a lecture on that verse, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that just see, Arjuna, he is seeking the blessings of the previous warrior Acharya, Hanumanji. So there he's explained that that's how a Vaishnava, he always considers himself helpless. He always considers himself helpless, and therefore he's always seeking the mercy and the blessings of the previous acharyas. So Vaishnava is never proud, thinking that I can do wonderful things. No. The Vaishnava is always thinking, actually, I'm helpless without the mercy of the Lord and the previous acharya. So here also we find Sutta Goswami, he is glorifying and praying for the mercy of Shukadeva to be able to answer the questions of the sages. Text 3. So in the text 3 also, he is offering his obeisances and seeking the blessings of Shukadeva Goswami. Yasvanubhavam akila shruti saramekam adhyatma deepam atitirshatam tamoandham samsarinam karunayaha purana guhyam tam vyasa sonam upayami gurum muninam. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. So here also, he is praying to Shukadeva Goswami. So he's glorifying Shukadeva Goswami as Swa Anubhavam. He has Anubhava. Anubhava means experienced. And after having experienced, assimilated the Akhila Shruti Saram, that means all the Vedic literatures, he has understood the Sara, the cream, because the Bhagavatam is the essence of all the Vedic literatures. We just saw that. Galitam Phalam. So if the Bhagavatam is the Saram, the cream of all the Vedic literatures, and Shukadeva Goswami, he has understood, he has assimilated the Saram. Vishwanath Chakravarti gives another meaning of the word Shruti Saram. He says that Bhagavatam is the essence for those who relish with the ear. So Bhagavatam is the most important scripture for those who want to relish hearing the scriptures. So Shukadeva Goswami, he has assimilated the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. And then he wants to, with that knowledge, the essence of all the Vedic scriptures, what he wants to do? Adhyatma Deepam Atiti Tirshatam Tamo Andham. So with that knowledge, which is like a deepam, which is like the lamp of what? Adhyatma, transcendental knowledge. The Bhagavatam is like a lamp of transcendental knowledge. And by this lamp, what one can do? One can cross over Atit Tirshatam. What one can cross over? Tamo Andham. One can cross over the darkness of ignorance with this knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's what Shukadeva Goswami has given. Shukadeva Goswami has given the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is like the torchlight of knowledge by which one can cross over the dark regions of material existence. Tama Andham. Samsarinam. So he has done this for the Samsarinam, the materialistic people, Karunaya, out of his great mercy. He has given this Purana Guhyam, this very confidential scripture he has given. And so Tam Vyasa Sunam, unto such son of Vyasadev, Upayami, let me offer my obeisances, Guru Munina. Okay, so in this way, here again, he's offering his obeisances and seeking the blessings of Shukadeva Goswami, who has given the Bhagavatam to help the materialistic, out of his compassion on the materialistic people, to cross the dark ocean of nations, material existence. That's what Srila Prabhupada is explaining about the nature of the material world, how everyone is trying to make a permanent plan for happiness, but everyone is baffled by the loss of material nature. Therefore, the materialistic world is called the darkest region of God's creation. Yet, the unhappy materialist can get out of it simply by desiring to get out. And that's what Shukadeva Goswami has done. Okay. Now, the fourth verse. So the Goswami is offering his obeisances and seeking the blessings of other personalities. So first he offered his obeisances and sought the blessings of his spiritual master Shukadeva Goswami. Now he's seeking the blessings of other personalities. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God in Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So he's offering obeisances to all these personalities over here. So please note it is Narayanam Namaskritya. Many times Bhagavatam speakers, while offering this praise, they say Namaskrityam, to rhyme with Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Namaskrityam Narottamam. Many Bhagavatam speakers tend to say that, but please note the exact verse is Narayanam Namaskritya. Okay, so he's offering his obeisances to all these personalities. Let's read this comment. Okay, read this comment.
Having offered respects to Guru, Suta offers respects to Devata, presiding deity, etc. Narayana are designated as the presiding deities of this work since they have authority over the place. The Devata or subject of the Bhagavatam is Krishna, Narottamam. Saraswati is the Shakti. The word Cha indicates the sage of the work, Vyasa. Some editions have the word Vyasam instead of Chaiva. That makes the meaning clear. The Bij is Om and the meter is predominantly Gayatri. Since the first verse of Bhagavatam begins with Om and reference to Gayatri, having offered respects to these persons, one should utter Jaya. This is a verb form calling out to Krishna. with raised hands. Jaya Shri Krishna, victory to Krishna. By using the potential case, Suta teaches other sages of the Puranas to do the same. Jaya also refers to this scripture because one can conquer samsara by studying it. So the meaning would be one should then speak the Bhagavatam Jayam. Vyasa first wrote the work in Badrikashrama where Nar Narayana preside. This is not the material deity. In the spiritual world exist counterparts to the devatas of the material world who assist the Lord in his pastimes there. For instance, Divya Saraswati gives Krishna mantra to Brahma in Brahma Samhita. Before reciting a mantra or a scripture, it is customary to utter the name of the sage who revealed the mantra, in this case Vyasa, the meter Gayatri, the form of the Lord who is the subject of the mantra Krishna, the bija of the work or mantra Om, the Shakti of the work or mantra Saraswati, the Adhishtatra Devata Nar Narayana, and the purpose of uttering the mantra.
Okay, so basically he's offering his respects to these various personalities here. So Narayanam. So here Narayanam refers to the Supreme Lord. And Naram Chaiva Narottamam. So that refers to Nar Narayan Rishi, who is the presiding deity of Badrikashram, where Vyasadev wrote all the scriptures. And Devim here, Devim Saraswatim refers to Saraswati, but here is mentioning that it does not refer to the demigoddess Saraswati, but refers to Divya Saraswati. So there are spiritual counterparts of all the devatas and the spiritual world who assist the Lord. So he's referring to that Saraswati. And then Vyasam, who is the author of this work, and Jayam Udirayat. So he's proclaiming victory. So in this way, he's offering his respects to all these personalities. And then the fifth verse. In the fifth verse, now Sutta Goswami is, after offering respects to all these personalities, now he's beginning to answer the questions of the sages. But before that, he's first of all glorifying the questions of the sages. Munaya sadhu prishto ham bhavatpi lokamangalam yat krita krishna samprashno yenatma suprasiddhati. O sages, I've been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. Okay, so he's glorifying the questions of the sages because Bhavatbi Lokamangalam, by these questions or the answers to these questions, the whole world will be benefited, will become auspicious. Why? Because these are Yat Krita Krishna Samprashno, because they're questions relating to Krishna. Therefore, one will be totally satisfied by these questions and answers. Therefore, Prabhupada is explaining how the whole world is full of questions and answers. Somebody is asking questions and somebody is giving answers. That's what happens in this world. But then at the end of the second paragraph, he says, satisfaction of the soul can only be obtained by questions and answers on the subject of Krishna. Okay. Now coming to the next section, which is Sutta Goswami beginning to answer the questions of the sages. And so the sixth verse is a very important verse where essentially Sutta Goswami is answering the first question of the sages. What is the first question of the sages? What is the ultimate welfare for all living beings? Okay, so this is the 9th verse of the previous chapter. So the sages had asked, please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. Okay, that was the question. The absolute and ultimate good for the people. And so this is the answer to that question. Famous verse and a very important verse. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radokshaje ahaituki apratyata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation or dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So this is the supreme occupation for all humanity. Is what? Yato bhaktir adokshaje. Bhakti to the Supreme Lord, who is known as Adokshaja. So what is the meaning of Adokshaja? Somebody would like to say?
Cannot be understood by the senses.
Yes, cannot be understood by the blunt material senses. Now, Srila Prabhupada in his lecture also explains another meaning of Adokshaja. So he says that Adokshaja means there is a to ksha in Sanskrit or Hindi alphabets. We have a to ksha. So he says Adokshaja means one who cannot be described by all the alphabets from a to ksha. That's also the meaning of Adokshaja. In other words, one who cannot be described by mundane words. So, performing bhakti to the Supreme Lord, Adokshaja, is the supreme occupation. And what should be the quality of such devotional service? Ahaituki apratihata. Ahaituki means without any motivations, material motivations, and without any interruption, apratihata. When one performs such type of bhakti, then the result will be yayatma suprasiddha. Then Atma, here the word Atma refers to body, mind, soul. Everything will be totally satisfied. Okay, read the first paragraph of the purport.
In this statement, Srila Sutta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential parts so that the fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the Pravarti Marg, or the path of sense enjoyment, or the other is called the Nivritti Marg, or the path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence or Brahma Bhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, or full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just a futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful, and all-cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation or abnegation for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality. That is, without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of the devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service.
Okay, so this is very similar to the definition of pure devotional service as given by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And I'm sure all of us are familiar with this famous verse, Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyanavritam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhaktir Uttama. So there also Rupa Goswami is saying that pure devotional service must be free from all material motives, Anya Abhilashita Shunyam, and uncovered by Jnana, Karma, must be favorably performed, Anukulyena Krishna, Anushilanam. There the word Anu, the prefix Anu there indicates that devotional service must be continuous, and according to the previous acharyas. So that type of devotional service, that quality of devotional service is very important. As Prabhupada is writing here, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality, that is without the least desire for material enjoyment. So to the degree our devotional service is pure, to that degree we can experience that satisfaction. Okay? Because Krishna is satisfied by that devotional service, and the jiva being part and parcel of Krishna also becomes satisfied. Okay, so that is the principle. In the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj gives the example that just like if we decorate the face, then the reflection of the face in the mirror automatically becomes decorated. There's no need to do something separate to decorate the reflection. So similarly, by satisfying the Supreme Lord, then automatically the jiva becomes satisfied. So this is science. It's a perfect science. So therefore, if we simply attempt to satisfy the Supreme Lord without any material motives, then automatically we can experience the satisfaction at all levels, body, mind, and soul. So Prabhupada is explaining these two paths, Pravriti Marg and Nivritti Marg. So Pravriti Marg means the path of sense enjoyment, like Karma Kand, and Nivritti Marg means the path of renunciation, to ultimately come to the point of having only one desire, and that is a desire to satisfy Krishna. So in the material world, everyone is after Pravriti Marg, sense enjoyment, but then there cannot be any true happiness by this process. So ultimately one has to give up that temporary sense enjoyment of the material world and come to the platform of satisfying Krishna. Then one can be satisfied. Okay, these are so Vishwanath Thakur, commenting on this verse, he goes into great details of the word ahituki, and he explains how bhakti has no cause. Bhakti has no cause other than bhakti. So bhakti comes from bhakti. So it's only by the intervention of a devotee who has bhakti within his heart that one can get bhakti. Bhakti has no other cause. So no other process can be the cause. Gyan, Vairagya, none of these can be the cause of bhakti, because bhakti is given by the Lord. And so bhakti is given by a devotee who has bhakti within his heart. And Krishna has empowered the devotees to spread bhakti. And so therefore, it's only by contacting a devotee that one can get bhakti. Bhakti has no other cause. That's also another meaning of the word ahituki. So we won't go into these details. He explains in great details of how bhakti is ahituki, has no other cause. Okay, let's read this, Prabhupada's lecture.
The first class religion which teaches how to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no consideration of which type of dharma or faith you are following. It doesn't matter. You may become a Christian, you may become a Mohammedan, you may become a Hindu or whatever. Is the question of actual relationship, because every living entity is a part and parcel of Krishna, and the duty of part and parcel is to render service to the whole. Krishna came to establish this type of religion, this first class religion. So Srimad Bhagavatam says, Save Pansa Param Dharmo, that type of service is first class, transcendental.
Okay, so Srila Prabhupada always explained that first class religion is that by which one comes to loving God. So one can practice Christianity, Muslim, whatever, but ultimately one should come to the point of loving God. Then that is first class religion. The same thing he says. Your system of religion is first class if you can develop your general love for Krishna or God, Adoksha. That is the test. Okay, read this. Somebody else read. Who has not read today?
May I?
Okay, go ahead.
Your business is to become a sincere devotee of Krishna, and without any expecting any success or failure, you do your duty, and you will see, Krishna will see that you are successful. That is Krishna consciousness movement. Ahetuki and you will be satisfied. Heya Atma suprasiddhati. As soon as you see, oh, I have done something for Krishna, devotee does not feel it. But when he sees that another man has become devotee, he becomes very satisfied. Yatma suprasiddhati. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness movement.
Yes, so basically Prabhupada is saying that our main business is to become sincere devotee of Krishna. That's our main business. As sometimes it's said, one should not aspire to become a great devotee, one should aspire to become a good devotee or a sincere devotee. And sincere devotee means no expectations of the fruits or the results. Results are for Krishna. Then one will feel satisfied. Okay. So anyway, there are many lectures of Srila Prabhupada on this verse, so you can read them in the database. So we'll go to the 7th verse. Now, by practicing this type of devotional service, what is the result? 7th verse. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha Janyatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahetukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So these are the results of the practice of bhakti. When one practices pure devotional service, the results are one automatically gets jnana and vairagya. Okay, please read the second paragraph of the purport.
The principles of knowledge and detachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realization. The whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything material and spiritual, and the results of such perfect knowledge are that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. Becoming detached from material things does not mean becoming inert altogether. As men with a poor fund of knowledge think, Naishkarma means not undertaking such activities that will produce good or bad effects. Negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the essentials. Similarly, detachment from material form does not mean nullifying the positive form. The bhakti cult is meant for realization of the positive form. When the positive form is realized, the negative forms are automatically eliminated. Therefore, with the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of the positive service to the positive form, one naturally becomes detached from inferior things and he becomes attached to superior things. Similarly, the bhakti cult, being the supermost occupation of the living beings, leads him out of material sense enjoyment. That is the sign of a pure devotee. He is neither a fool nor is he engaged in the inferior energies, nor does he have material values. This is not possible by dry reasoning. It actually happens by the grace of the Almighty. In conclusion, one who is a pure devotee who has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, detachment, etc., but one who has only knowledge or detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of the bhakti cult. Bhakti is the supermost occupation of the human being.
Yes, so here Srila Prabhupada is especially explaining about detachment, the vairagya. So basically these are two effects of practicing devotional service. So first of all, one gets knowledge, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita. Which are the verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna speaks about when one practices devotional service, one gets knowledge?
Tesham satat yuktanam.
Yes, that's one verse. Yes, Tesham satat yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yanamam. Yes, Krishna says, I'll give them the intelligence to come to me. And then the next verse. Tesham evanu kampartam aham agyanajam tama nashyami atma bhavastu jnana deepena bhasvata. So these are two verses where Krishna is saying that he himself gives the knowledge in the heart of a devotee. So therefore, a devotee can never be in ignorance. Also, we have the famous verse, Krishna Suryasam, Maya hai andhakar, Jaha Krishna, Taha nahi Mayara adhikar. So wherever there's Krishna's sun, there cannot be the darkness of ignorance. And then here he's explaining about detachment, vairagya. So here, in the path of bhakti, vairagya, detachment is not like that of the jnanis and yogis who simply give up everything. So therefore, Prabhupada is writing this beautiful statement. Negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the essential. Similarly, detachment from material forms does not mean nullifying the positive form. So we are becoming detached from the material things, but then at the same time, we become attached to the positive form, and that is Krishna. Or by becoming attached to Krishna, one automatically becomes detached from all the material things. Okay. So therefore, the jnanis and yogis just give up everything. Okay. And they simply try to realize that I'm not the body, I'm the spirit soul. But they give up everything. So that is called as false vairagya. That also you must have studied in the Nectar of Devotion. Falgu vairagya and yukta vairagya. So we just don't give up everything, but then we become attached to Krishna, and by becoming attached to Krishna, one develops the higher taste. That's what Prabhupada is writing here. With the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of positive service to the positive form, one naturally becomes detached from inferior things and it becomes attached to superior things. So by becoming attached to Krishna, then one develops param drishva nivartate, the higher taste. And when one develops the higher taste, then one automatically becomes detached from all the material things. So this is vairagya, yukta vairagya. So therefore the devotee doesn't just give up everything, but rather he uses everything in the service of the Lord because he knows that everything belongs to Krishna and should be used in Krishna's service. So this is the principle of yukta vairagya. Yes, so this is another famous verse from the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, Bhakti Parishanabhav Virakti. So these are the effects of the practice of devotional service. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasing with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So just like a person eating, he feels satisfied, nourished, and his hunger goes away. So similarly, by practicing bhakti, one automatically develops virakti, that is detachment from all the material things. Okay. Okay, fine. So we will stop here today and we will continue our discussions in the next class next Saturday.
Prabhuji, is this verse text number 7 answer to any of the questions?
Well, of course, both the verses, 6th and 7th, both are basically answer to that first question. Second question is the essence of all the scriptures. So that comes later.
Like you said that the verse number 6 is the answer to question number 1. So similarly, text number 7, is this answer to also any question?
I don't think so. It is answer to any specific question. It's like combined with the 6th verse, because 6th verse is speaking about pure bhakti. The 7th verse is speaking about the effects of that bhakti. So okay, they are related.
Okay.
All right. Okay, can we stop for today?
Thank you so much.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So we'll continue next time. Thank you, Srila
Prabhuji,
Prabhupada ki jai, Grandraj
Hare Krishna,
Bhagavatam ki
Prabhuji.
jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, just one request. These
Yeah.
PPTs will be available for us to review?
I don't know. It depends on the organizers, what the organizers want.
Okay.
So
Maybe
we'll let you know later.
Okay.
So maybe Rukmini Mataji, you can find out maybe from Bimal Prasad Prabhu.
Okay.
All right. Oh,
yes.
Hare.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.